On it, and now we're waiting. Okay, so we are live. Welcome to Alisa and Natasha. This is Migrant Woman Reality Watch number 10. So thank you so much for being available and taking the time to be here with us today. Today's theme is online or cyber violence against women and girls. And with me in the studio, as you can see, I have Alisa Rabar and Natasha Norvin. They are both members of the Radical Girls, which is the young women's movement of the European Network of Migrant Women. Natasha is also the founder, of Feminism Pakistan, which is a Facebook feminist page that deals with everything related to feminism and focuses also on Pakistan, which is where Natasha is originally from. And Alisa is one of the spokeswomen for the French association Oser le Féminisme. Both Natasha and based in Italy and France, respectively. And today they are here to talk to us about cyber violence against women and girls, as we have said before. We just have a little technicality before for the women and men, for the viewers who are looking at this video today. Questions or comments, you can just write it on the chat below, and we will make the best to address those questions. So yeah, I'm not going to take. I would like to ask you first and present yourselves. The question is, why girls?
Adriana, can I tell you, Adria, you're breaking up a little bit, so I don't know.
Okay. I will mute my mic and make the best to see what is happening. In the meantime, you can go ahead, Natasha.
Sure. So you start, Alyssa. I'll listen.
Okay. So I'm Alisa Rabar, as Adriana said. I'm 25 years old. I'm French, and I'm a legal expert with a specialization in human rights and fundamental liberties. I'm also an authoress. I write plays to sensitize against violence against women and girls. And as Adriana said, I'm spokeswoman for the French organization of general interest, Oser le Féminisme. This organization is an advocacy organization, but we also do popular education in order to educate society about discrimination and sexism. For instance, we do interventions in schools. And I'm also obviously a member of Radical Girls. And what I'm most interested in within the feminist movement is the cultural aspect of the fight. Changing mentalities, representations, storytelling, and so on. To me, this is absolutely instrumental in actually achieving equality, because the legal and policy making changes aren't enough. And to me, Radical Girls is very important towards this aspect, because first of all, it's led by young migrant women, so it's a new voice that's not often heard. And also we do both advocacy and grassroots. So I think we have a very unique perspective, and we have a focus on the people who are never portrayed and heard, specifically girls and young women, migrant women. That's you can go ahead, Natasha.
Okay. With that introduction, it's really hard to keep up because you covered a lot of important aspects of what I stand for. This is why we are part of one group, even though we come from so many different backgrounds. This is the beauty of Radical Girls. I am Natasha Noreen. I'm 25 years old as well, and I'm a migrant from Pakistan, and I've been living in Italy for many years now. And locally, I'm an activist for migrant people, and I'm part of this local association which promotes integration in a very pacifist way. So we organize local events that promote unity in between people rather than focusing on the differences. we focus on what we have in common and make the best out of it, right? On the other hand, I am the founder of Feminist Pakistan, and it has been 4 years that I got this platform. And the idea here was very basic, honestly, to promote basic understanding of feminism within South Asian context, because within that context we don't have many voices that promote feminism. There are many women who are working for women's rights, men who are working for the promotion of women's rights, but not many people are proudly, openly call themselves feminists. And for me, the um, to open this word and to say that, it's not a dirty word as we are supposed to think all the time, that, oh, you're a feminist, so you are a witch, you are a home wrecker or something. And we just need to sanitize this word and to make it common, which we normally have. In Western societies we have a better knowledge, but in South Asian culture we don't have that. We are still at the level of, let's say, in the beginning of second wave feminism, like even before that, when women were not believed much for whatever they said. So it was important to create this platform, not for my personal self, but for all the women and girls who want to talk, who want to they have proper ideas and they want to talk about it, but they can never talk. So this is a platform from just any woman, for all the women in Pakistan or out of Pakistan, for all of them to have a voice. And I think that's enough for the moment. Let's talk about our argument. So, Adriana.
Thank you both for your presentation. I tried to fix my mic. Everything seems to be in order. So please, if you don't understand what I'm saying, please repeat it again. It's totally fine.
Sure.
So as Natasha said, we'll get right to the point. So as was said before, today we're talking about online violence against women and girls. And my first question to you both would be that if you could give us kind of an easy definition, or what do you think for you is cyber violence against women and girls? And why do you think it's sometimes seen as an intergenerational issue and sometimes relegated to the back because it's not materially perceived, and some women may think that it's hard to tackle it? So how would you define it, and why do you think this phenomenon that I just mentioned occurs? I hope you understood me.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. I think, like, to give you a simple definition of what cyber violence against women and girls are for me, I would say that it's like a magnifying glass of the violence we face already in like everyday lives and in society, because there is this feeling of unaccountability in the internet that definitely puts an emphasis on the violence and the inequality that already exists. And before we like go to the specifics, I wanted to like portray like a global vision of this issue, because as you said, Adriana, it's often minimized, and it's actually a very global and very like huge problem. And there have been actually quite a few research and studies that show that 1 in 3 women will experience some kind of violence in her lifetime. And a lot of this violence today come from social media and the internet in general. So the UNESCO has done one of these studies and has suggested that 73% of women have already been exposed to some kind of online violence. And many women face this violence before, like as soon as the age of 15 years old. So they are teenagers, they are girls. And so this problem, as I said before, is global. And the issue that we face mainly is that because, and Adriana, you mentioned that many people think it's a generational problem, because it's fairly new, because social media platforms are evolving very, very fast. The local, the national and international regulations about it are not keeping up. It's moving too fast for the politicians and the governments to like make efficient laws against the abuses that exist on the internet. And also it's not even acknowledgeable. And so I'm going to give some example. There are like threat of rape, death, stalking, obviously, and these types of abuse, even though they are on the internet, they have the same consequences for women that can have like an everyday violence, such as being harassed on the street or at work physically. So these consequences can be like mentally being mentally unwell, so for instance loss of appetite, loss of sleep, and so on. It can also be very concrete, like loss of time, loss of financial resources, if you have to pay legal fees or online protection services, if you have to stop working and you can miss wages, and so on. So these violences, they have a profoundly chilling effects on women and girls, and sometimes they have the effect of silencing women, because if we talk on social media, we know that we are going to expose ourselves to this kind of violence. So I think Twitter is a very good example of this. I know that Natasha afterwards will give a very concrete and recent example of it, but generally speaking, there were a study from Amnesty International that showed that sexism flourishes on Twitter with close to no accountability. And it's very interesting because Twitter advertises itself as a platform where everyone can speak freely and like everyone can have a voice and so on. But it shows that it's not the case, because women can be terrorized on Twitter, and especially women of color who have 84% more chances of being harassed, according to the same study from Amnesty International. So yeah, as I was saying, this is a global problem. I want to emphasize again that it touches young women a lot, because women aged between 18 and 24 are the most likely to face this kind of abuse. And yeah, as I was saying, I want to go back to that, this idea of a magnifying glass, because these violences exist on the internet because they exist in real life, and internet actually reproduces what happens in real life, and because it's anonymous, because the algorithm are biased, because of a lot of reasons that we are going to talk about, I think, during this talk, it's just magnified. And instead of like brushing it away because it's dematerialized, we should focus on it even more, because I don't think people realize how strong and impactful it can be, especially for young girls and women. Yeah, that's for me for this question.
Thank you so much. So according to your answer, it would then be logical to talk about an evolution of cyber violence, that we can say that the platforms that are today utilized differ a bit from the platforms of the previous decades. Yeah, would it then be correct to talk about an evolution of cyber violence against women and girls? And if it makes sense, if so, in what shape does this violence take form in today's life, in the days of today, and how can we make kind of a time frame of that evolution?
I think in this sense, like I personally believe that there has been an evolution of violence against women. But first, before talking about that, we need to understand that our society is deeply patriarchal society, which has no sympathy or whatsoever for women. They don't hear our concerns. They have never acknowledged it. It has been feminist women who have always been, we are still fighting for our rights, our basic rights, still in 21st century. So when we start with this basic thought, we understand that even though internet was created for everybody, but still there's a group that is being excluded, which is women who are being excluded. But when we are being part of it, we have always been subjected to different type of violences, and this differentiates from the beginning of like in the beginning of this century when we talk about internet being starting a technological revolution. The problems we were facing, it was I think very how do you say vague, because again, in a patriarchal society, women were not considered, like women are not still considered important. And even back then, in the beginning of internet, nobody took care of this important aspect that women could be the subject of violence online. We never thought of it. So with the Facebook, or before Facebook, there were Reddit and many other groups. It was very limited, and the discussions were with words. So you didn't have much of imagery going on. And with the evolution of internet, that we started posting pictures, starting putting videos that disappear in within seconds of being seen. This is what is happening, that first it was verbal abuse that was going on online, then it was imagery um, abuse that was, and that is still going on. That brings us to 21st century, where all the platforms are used in some kind of violence against women. When we talk about Instagram, there is a huge relevancy for young women. They have to, they have this certain pressure to look that sexist way, otherwise they are not noticed. This is how on Twitter as well. We talked about Twitter as well. Twitter is considered to be very academic or very professional kind of platform, but still the sexism there is huge. And the important, like the biggest example now we can see is the J.K. Rowling stand that is going on. That a women, we don't have to. From my from my personal perspective, I don't think it's because it's J.K. Rowling, so the violence is going, like it is addressed towards her, but it's because it's a woman, so the violence is being addressed to her. And related to that, now whoever is um, trying to support her, which are mostly women and girls, they are being harassed as well. And I think in that I would talk from very personal perspective experience, that when when I supported for the first time J.K. Rowling, I was bashed not from the male group of society, but from the female side as well. And here we talk about the constant grooming that we have been put under, because normally when we talk about grooming, we talk about some children being groomed into thinking, oh, you're, into manipulative behaviors. But when we talk about evolution of internet, this is what internet has groomed young girls and women into thinking, into being submissive online as well. This is why we could never own internet spaces, I feel like.
Thank you. I forgot to unmute my mic. Thank you so much for making the relation to grooming, because that is exactly the theme of the next question, which is the kind of the promotion, but also sexualization of violence against women and girls. I'm thinking of pornography as the most obvious example, but of course there's many other facets to sexual exploitation online. So yeah, I wanted to, maybe this is an idealist question, a kind of ideal question, but what do you think could be done to tackle the sexualization of women and girls and the violence that is addressed towards them? What do you think can be done from a global feminist perspective? But also, and this is the second part of the question, how can we make our respective governments or of the countries we are based in accountable for the violence that happens online?
I'm sorry, I almost broke my computer. Yeah, so I'm gonna answer your question, Adriana, about like what can we do, what can be done. But first of all, I want to portray again, like really quickly, how like all the different ways in which these violence can express themselves. Because first of all, I gave you some statistics, and then Natasha, you gave some concrete examples, but we haven't brushed it all because there are so many of them. So Natasha, you mentioned the beauty standards, the representation, and I think that's very interesting because that's a double problem to me. Because first of all, there is the quantity of the representation, because women are not represented as much on social media and in media in general and streaming platforms and so on. So women basically are nowhere and men are everywhere, to like put it roughly. And that has an impact, because when women are portrayed, they always look the same. They always have the same roles. They always have the same actions and so on. For instance, in movies, a lot of women don't work. A lot of women are just like waiting around for a man. A lot of women just like if they do work, they only work like in the care. So, for instance, nurses or in secretaries. Um, so they always have the same type of jobs. This has an impact on girls because they cannot imagine themselves outside of these models. And on top of that, when they are represented with heavy beauty standards and overly sexualized. So that's a very important issue of social media, especially like specific platforms such as Instagram, for instance, that rely almost solely on the beauty, the naked or half naked bodies, how like perfect you can look, how perfect your life can look, your body can look, and stuff like that. And this affects girls first because, for instance, if you talk about food disorders, 90% of people with bulimia are women. So, yeah, that's the first, to me, real concrete impact of representation on social media, but it's not the only one. It's also like a place. The internet is a place for like-minded people to find each other. There are something called the confirmation bias, le biais de confirmation in French, and it's basically the fact that you're gonna believe things that you already believe are true, and that's highlighted by social media because, for instance, Facebook is often going to show you things that you already believe in. So, for instance, if you don't believe in climate change, the Facebook algorithm is going to send you like articles and stuff like that that say, oh no, climate change isn't real and stuff like that. So you're going to believe it more and more, and you're going to find people who believe the same thing, and that creates groups on social media that are very dangerous. So, for instance, the ENSO, which is a masculinist group, they already perpetrated terrorist attacks against women in Canada, for instance. And basically, they are a group who hates women. They are called involuntary celibates, and they believe that women owe them sex, and because they don't want them, basically they are whores who deserve to be killed. And because they find each other, they can organize and they can actually kill women, as it has happened. It's also as I was saying before, a magnifying glass on societal and structural issues. For instance, in France, there were groups that were highlighted where journalists or police people were having very sexist and very racist conversations. And that raises a lot of questions because these people are supposed to protect us in the case of the police, or in the case of the media, they are supposed to be neutral in order to give us the best possible information. And through these groups who were secret before, we can see how much it's not the case. Then there are obviously pornography, as you were saying, Adriana. To me, it's one of the main issues because people have access to pornography more and more young today. The median age of watching porn for the first time for a boy is 9 years old. And these very violent images, because their violence is actually women being raped, women being tortured, women being gang raped, and stuff like that. I'm not going to enter into details, but in the Radical Girls Facebook page, we have had a month-long campaign about pornography, and you can find a lot of informations and reality checks. But basically, this has a lot of negative effects. First of all, because it makes a new generation learn sexuality through a violent spectrum. And they end up believing that this is the only way to orgasm, which is obviously not the case, especially for women. And also, it gives an image of women as submissive and men as dominant. This is a very essentialist perspective that serves as a base for every kind of violence against women. For instance, for rape, we often hear that men have sexual pulsions that they can control, and women don't have sexual desire at all. So we should just accept being raped. I'm sorry, my phone is ringing. And yeah, this has a lot of impact in what we call rape culture, which is the fact that the victim is always blamed and the perpetrator, the attacker, the rapist, whatever, we always find excuses for him. So this also finds its roots in online violence. And finally, there is pedocriminality, which is a very important subject for me. Because of the sexualization we were mentioning before, that's happening for younger and younger girls, because they are showed like models of like in video clips or in Instagram or whatever, women half naked all the time or twerking, dancing in a very sexual manner and so on. They are filming themselves doing these same representations and posting it on social media like Snapchat or more recently TikTok. And TikTok actually is a social media platform where there are a lot of young girls posting such pictures and videos, and a lot of pedocriminals are watching these pictures, are talking to the girls, and actually social media can serve as a pool for pedocriminals to find their victims and then trick them into meeting and then actually attacking them or raping them. And that's the same thing for online dating platforms such as Tinder. Uh, for instance, I have an example like La Manada, La Meute. It was in 2016 in Spain. A woman who was a tourist, I think, she found a guy on Tinder, which is a like dating app. And she met him, and he was with his friends, and they gang raped her. And then during trial, it was argued by the defense that it wasn't a rape and she was consenting because she was on Tinder. So basically, she wanted to have sex. So yeah, a lot of tricks like that that serves rape culture. I think it's not like this problem of cyber violence needs to be analyzed in the continuum, what we call the continuum of violences. It fits within patriarchy. It's not apart from it. It's not something particular. It's something truly like within it, and we do not we should not ignore it. And so to answer finally your question, Adriana, I'm sorry I spoke forever. But we need to address this, and governments are not doing it enough. And first of all, we need to have like safeguards, especially for children, not to access violent content like pornography or like sexualized images and stuff like that. So that's the first thing. And then like the WWW Foundation found that law enforcement agency and courts are failing to take appropriate actions for against cyber violence against women and girls in 74% of 86 countries that were surveyed. So basically what we can do as feminists is reach out to the government and like highlight this issue and ask them to take appropriate measures. And so apart from the governments, who obviously have their role to play, we also should address the companies that actually are making the platforms and the algorithm, because they are encouraging this violence. We often say that in a context of injustice, if you're neutral, if you do nothing, you're in like on the side of the perpetrator. So it's the same thing here. If they are not doing anything to prevent this violence, they are as guilty, because they are giving the space for the violence to happen. So they also need to be taken accountable. So we need to focus on that and ask them for better systems for cooperating with law enforcement, also more effective takedown procedures for abusive and harmful contents, and also transparency of the action that they actually take against this, because usually these platforms, they don't want to communicate about what they do, why they do it. For instance, the la censure. How do you say censure, Adriana? Censorship. Yeah, the censorship on Facebook, like it's very they never explain why they censor something and not the other. So for instance, some arts have been actually censored from Facebook, such as Les Origines du Monde, the origins of the world, which is table that shows a vulva. On the other hand, some very violent content sometimes is not censored. So we need more transparency in order to understand what they are doing and ask them to do better. And finally, the UNESCO, in the study that I was mentioning at the beginning of the talk, said that there were 3 key actions to take. There are sensitization, safeguards, and sanctions. So sensitization, because as I was saying, we need to reach out to the public, to the governments, to the companies, and so on, in order for them to see the problem. Then safeguards, as I was saying, and finally sanction, because I didn't mention that obviously, but we need sanction against the perpetrator, and they need to be as heavy as the ones for violence in real life, because as I was saying before, the consequences are the same.
Thank you. And sometimes those consequences can even be lethal. We know of the cases of many girls who have committed suicide because they found their images online.
I think some in Italy as well, Natasha. I remember the story of a teenage girl, like there were revenge porn against her, and she ended up killing herself because of the harassment, right?
Yeah, there was few months ago. It's a recent story, and it's always, it gives me goosebumps all the time because of the story, how horrible it was. So we were talking about evolution of violence, right? So more and more platforms are giving more men closed spaces where they can discuss everything, right? It's not open debate anymore, but it's some like closet, I don't know, sorry, changing room when men talk about women, like, they are some kind of sub objects or something. This is how one of the platforms is called Telegram. It had about 29 to 30 groups where they would have pictures from girls and women uh, who had been in a relationship with these men. And not only that, we touched about the argument pedocriminality among these groups. There were 2 million people, men. We need to precisely say when it is women and men, but this time it was 2 million men, and 30,000 messages were exchanged every day. And among these messages, where they had so many revenge porn images of girls and young girls, there were these horrible pedophile men who would go to the limit of saying how could they stop their daughter from crying when they are trying to have intercourse with them, with the baby girls who are underage girls, and these father of they are sending these messages. It talks a lot about how men they take care of each other, which I feel like, as in a patriarchal society, women are not taught to do. Honestly, feminists are doing it more and more. Thank to the feminist God, I would say that we are doing it now, but it was not the case. And here again, just to connect what Alyssa might now tell you, what we were discussing earlier, that now this new minister is being put in action, who is a lawyer for rapists, right? We were talking about it, and this is the society we are living in, that more men are taking men's sides, and they're covering them for whatever criminal what crime they are committing, and we are supposed to just stay shut up. And it's not the extreme examples for me. It's also everyday life experiences when women, just for the fact, like, I know there are so many South Asian girls online who are afraid to the point that they don't put their pictures online, that they don't want to be harassed or known in any way. For me, it's like saying it's like putting hijab on online, right, on their profile, so that they can't be recognized and they don't exist. And this talks much about it, that about the violence that women are going through, young women are going through. Lisa told statistics, but other than the statistics, what is going on is that the negation of what is going on, right? More and more people, the society actually is not able to understand the violence that is being portrayed against women and girls in all these platforms. We only get shook when similar examples of these revenge porn groups come up, and we're like, oh my god, how did it start and where did it go? But we don't understand that this starts from all the portrayal of violence going on mainstream media. For example, what I really want to emphasize here, the Netflix and all the private entertainment streaming platforms, what they are portraying, what the politics they have in action, it's extremely harmful. And this also, like, it also falls under the internet area, cyber, like we should, include that when we talk about cyber crimes and internet related arguments. That now we were talking about the film 365 days, how it is normalizing rape. Not like, we don't even go talking on about the rape culture where you have to, analyze from a feminist perspective and go and into details how this, that. But this platform is basically very openly romanticizing, showing this rapist that that apparently have no issue, like our society have no issue with that. We are just accepting it, and we are again grooming our young girls and women into feeling that this is somehow normal, and these platforms, they are not held accountable, whether in the form of online violence or whether in the entertainment industry. They are just set on the side because this is a separate thing. But I think we need to really understand that how the role they are playing in all this big circle of violence that is going, that touches one point and the other. Just like talking about the TikTok video, um, we got banned. Megan Murphy was banned by Janice Yanev, right? That was the name of that criminal. That same man now is on TikTok interacting with young girls, actually young girls, teenagers, and there is no whatsoever action that is being taken against that. Again, this talks a lot about the priorities of all the social media platforms that are all for freedom of expression. I do not think that pedophilia could fall under the liberation of the freedom of word, or sexual liberation, or anything. These are creeps that need to be put behind the bars. But as we do not like to talk about women's experiences, we do not like to accept what women go through, it's really easy to put a woman behind social media bars rather than accepting a man is an actual pedophile, and we need to put that. This talks a lot about our institutions that are not doing anything. They always they are trying to make internet a safe place for people. That includes all these creeps, but they don't have any specific policies to address the needs and address the preoccupations of women and men. I think this is alarming, and what is more alarming is seeing very young women and girls having no issue with that. So as feminists, I feel like we have so much work, like not only in the advocacy and law enforcement area, but also with the social politics, that where we need to help all these girls one by one. But it's a huge responsibility, and this is one of the ways patriarchy plays game against feminism and women. That all the responsibility falls upon us, that it's on us now that we are talking about women's rights. So now we have to take the charge, and have to start a movement to change, to do something, instead of taking their own responsibility. I think that, again, this talks a lot, it talks very clearly about the patriarchal ways of blaming, not believing women, and doing everything to put them in the corner, so that they can serve patriarchy as they have always been doing. To you, Adriana, I'm tired of talking. It breaks my heart. It's such a painful argument, and I feel like more and more political institutions, they need to talk about it. It shouldn't be us telling them that we exist. For once, I feel like in the 21st century, they should be able to say, like, please, welcome, let's talk about your concerns.
Yeah, I want to connect to something that you said, because I think it's really interesting. You were talking about young girls who kind of lack feminist perspective. Maybe they've never been exposed, but also due to the grooming that you also talked about before. Being against sexual exploitation is not fun. It's not sexy, let's say, so we kind of bear the brunt of being those angry, annoying feminists. I wanted to ask you if you see any how can we reach young girls that are not used to having feminist analysis or some kind of knowledge in their everyday lives? How can we make these girls recognize, for example, that they're being coerced in dating platforms? For example, send nudes. It's just a simple sentence, right? But almost all of us have read or heard this sentence, especially young girls send nudes or make a video. How can we alert women who are victims of revenge pornography, but since those institutions and since those governments don't put any safeguards and guarantees that they will be protected in the online realm, how can we reach these young women and prevent them from really, and I'm sorry, but this is really not an exaggeration, from killing themselves in the end, from hurting themselves, from them being scared for the rest of their life and not being even able to have a social life because something so horrible happened to them online?
Well, I think the key is education, sensitization, and trying to reach them from the youngest age. Like, I think we can start educating to equality very young, like starting 3 years old, for instance, even before, because it's at the beginning of socialization that people make a difference between boys and girls, and they treat us different, and the basis then for all these other violences that we mentioned. And so that's why, for instance, with those Feminism, as I was saying, we are doing interventions in schools. I think we also should uh, sensitize on social media, like try to have like Instagram accounts and, I don't know, Facebook accounts, Facebook pages and stuff like that, with a lot of content, a lot of explanations for these girls. With Oser le Féminisme, we just finished a campaign that's called Frangine, which in English means sisters. And we have a website that aims at educating teenage girls to sexuality, um, like a feminist sexuality, let's say, like a sexuality based on their desire, their wants, their needs, and detached from preconceived ideas and violence and coercion and so on. And I think the more we reach these girls, the better, because they're going to have other models, other representations in their head. It's not going to be the same thing everywhere. They're going to be like, oh, something else is possible. I saw that, so it's possible. And we need to address it. We need to talk about it. We need to like prevent the taboos and the fact that people don't dare talking about these issues, because they think if we don't talk about it, it's gonna disappear. That's what happened with Me Too. A lot of people reproached, like attacked the feminists, saying that it's because of us that this is happening. Like, because of the Me Too movement, men cannot talk to women anymore. But this was happening before. The movement is just like women finally speaking up, and some of them finally getting some justice, and not enough of them, unfortunately. So yeah, I think speaking about it and trying to reach out and trying to educate men and women, boys and girls, and so on.
Natasha, do you think this applies to the South Asian context, for example? Because patriarchy, I mean, it's a global patriarchal structure. It's a global well of patriarchy. But I think in Pakistan, it kind of shows itself in other ways. Do you think what Elisa just proposed would kind of be the same for your country, Pakistan, or do you think there are other fronts to fight in?
I personally believe in the main role of entertainment here. That is the one that plays more role in educating a society, not just the schools or other institutions. because at the end of the day, like especially in a Pakistani context, more and more children, uh, they are actually going to schools, but schools at the end of the day, in especially South Asian context, they are the replica of patriarchy. There is no difference in our schools. There is no progressive thought being promoted. So in that area, the schools do not play a bigger role, right? And even the schools that are doing it, some rich schools, they have very liberal ideologies in a way that they don't have feminist ideologies. They wouldn't actually accept feminist ideologies from the core of the institution, from the basic in their studies. But entertainment, on the other hand, uh, it does not play any, like it's not playing its role what it should be, but it could be. For me, for the people who are already tired of studying in schools or having a academia talk, and they when they sit in front of a computer or a TV or some kind of entertainment source, what they are being fed, that is the most important. And if you analyze South Asian context, if not some specific platforms there where they have very nice content, but the general content which is being portrayed, it's extremely sexist. Saying patriarchal is not enough. Like it has all the problems that one can have with a society. It has all that. It's hatred towards minority. It's hatred towards women. It's hatred towards young girl and the grooming they are doing. It's impressive. So on the one hand, schooling and social change is very much possible in European context because we have much better uh, approach towards school and in social context, a lot of associations like Alisa's association, they are doing very good work. But within South Asian context, or I'm not sure if I'm allowed to use the third word, countries, that's a specific term, but it doesn't do much in those contexts, I feel.
Maybe you will be the first teacher in Pakistan to give such lessons. Yeah, we're running out of time, unfortunately. I really like hosting you girls here and talking about this because I think it's really, really relevant. My last question is really a question, more like an open statement. I would like to know if you had a specific last message for the younger generations come after us and are groomed into a neoliberal, so-called progressive ideology. I will call it ideology. To those that do not have the chance to learn from the mothers and foremothers like we had, because they're slowly being erased. So I would like this audio to stay kind of in history and just to keep a message for younger generations, if you will, so of course.
So yeah, I think it's beautiful, first of all. And like when I'm asked this type of question, I always say like the thing that I wish someone had told me when I was a young girl, like a child, is like first of all, it's not okay. Like because every time I was asking a question like why this and why that, because I thought things were unfair. Like people were like, oh, it's like this, it's like that, like is adults, like people sometimes are under the impression that things always existed and always will exist this way, but everything is a construction. Everything is the product of history and culture and individual choices and collective choices and so on. So nothing is just like this. So first of all, it's not okay. Like if you feel like something is unfair and not good for you should listen to yourself. And second of all, women did great thing. Like, just look it up, find everything women did through history. It's amazing, it's inspiring, it's being erased, but we are trying to bring it forward. And once you've seen it, you will get inspired, and you will be able to do everything as well.
Thank you. Natasha?
So I'm actually still thinking because the influence on young girls, it's so huge from the like all perspectives. So they are the most vulnerable, honestly. That on one hand they have this extreme conservative people, and on the other hand they have this extreme liberal. But at the end of the day, none of these want the betterment of these young girls, and it's really understandable that they get confused and they get lost. But one thing I feel like telling to all the young girls, if they ever, which Alyssa said, to never to trust your guts, because as women we know much more, we feel much more trustworthy, some stuff that that patriarchal societies are trying to erase. They're trying to tell us what you feel, or your instincts are lying to you. But that's just gaslighting being happen to young girls. That's not true. So whenever, this is the only message. Trust your guts and go with that, and never for a moment hate your womanhood or your existence as women. It's not yourself who is to be blamed. Somehow, it's the patriarchal culture that is making you into a hateful object. You're not. We need to remember that we are human beings with very much working minds. As Alice said, the history is full of extremely amazing women, but that is being erased. So trust in yourself, in your fellow feminist women. It's really important. Yeah.
And also try to find in yourself solidarity for other women and other girls, because we are always educated to be in competition with each other. But what we need to remember is that as girls, as women, we go through the same experiences of violences, abuse, and so on. And we need to be sisters. That's why, like, in Radical Girls, we have this value of sisterhood, which is very important. We need to bring each other up and not down. And we need to acknowledge that we are a group who share a same history, a same culture, and a same oppression. And we need to fight it together. So yeah, this idea of solidarity and sisterhood is also very important, I think.
Definitely.
And because social media platforms, they thrive on this idea that women are in competition. So it's easier to groom a woman that doesn't listen to other women so much in contact, because there will always be the next woman, so they sell their image. So I think it's a very important message that both of you just gave. So yeah, we've reached the end of the Migrant Woman Reality Watch. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
It's a lot.
Thank you, Natasha. Thank you, Adisa. And yeah, if you want to follow the Radical Girls on social media, we have a Facebook account, a Twitter account, and an Instagram account. We also have our own blog, but we will be publicizing that in the upcoming weeks. So you can just type Girls Radical with 3 S's or Radical Girls, and I'm sure that you will find us. Thank you so much for
Adriana.
Have a great day.
Bye.
You too. Thank you. Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.